Hi, it's Nick Stekovich, Project Manager Evolution, and in this video, we're going to take a look at what is a hybrid model in project management. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back. It's Nick Stekovich, Project Manager Evolution. And in this video, we're going to take a closer look into a hybrid model, the blend between the Waterfall and Agile, right? Which is kind of very interesting because a lot of the companies these days, especially corporations and large companies, are kind of moving into that model as it's a blend of both worlds. But let's have a look on our board. When we take a look at the Waterfall versus Agile and then how blended they look together. So with Waterfall, the types of projects that you would run in Waterfall are either campaign-based, event, could be a physical product or some sort of a structure, like a building, or if you're building like a residential building or a commercial building. Manufacturing is another example for waterfall-based project. Agile typically likes to be with software, IT, marketing, and then the blended mode is a kind of a tech focused project where dev is part of the bigger puzzle, right? In terms of scope, any size project with a defined scope would be something for Waterfall, whereas opposed to Agile, kind of a small to medium project with iterative increments, because Agile, is constant iteration, constant change, which allows flexibility, right? And as a result of Agile and Waterfall in our hybrid model, you'll get the size of any project or any scope, right? When we take a look at the budget, for budget, Waterfall is typically fixed because it goes initially with the business case, and then you have to do a project charter, you have to get the formal approval, and all the costs for resources and everything is defined at the very beginning of the project, whereas opposed to Agile, it's flexible because you're constantly building something which is a shippable product in either 1 week or 4 week sprints. And as a result of that, you're basically, in a way, able to work with the budget, right? It's much more flexible than fixed, which is Waterfall, right? And a blended version would be flexible, but with an understanding of the boundaries, right? So the understanding of the boundaries comes from Waterfall. And in terms of flexibility, it's directly derived from Agile, right? In terms of deadlines, Waterfall is working towards like a planned milestone with fixed deadlines, versus Agile, as I mentioned, is working with sprints, iterations, with a flexible to push tasks to a future sprint if needed, right? And the blend of the two worlds would be, you can use sprints and milestones in order to get that work done for the project. In terms of the roles, so when we take a look at the role of PM directly, PM is a traditional type of project manager that's managing, pretty much controlling, executing, and making sure that the project is moving in the right direction towards the end of the project, obviously, and is constantly on the lookout to make sure all the impediments and any challenges are being alleviated from a project. And the typical role is a project manager, or it could be a program manager. In the case of Agile, we've got this different role, which is called Scrum Master. So the difference between the Scrum Master and the project manager is that project manager has all the responsibility on the project when he or she is managing. Whereas opposed to Scrum Master is pretty much the facilitator to the project. So he's allowing the dev team or the team members to be unblocked if work needs to be done, right? So he is kind of facilitating for the unblocking of anything that comes along, and in most agile teams, Scrum Master is the one that is involved with the team in terms of coordinating of the unblocking, but at the same time, it's assumed that every agile team is sustainable and is capable of resolving their own problems. So, what I mean by that is, if a team is blocked, for example, a developer is blocked, or maybe another team resource is blocked, the first automatic response from a Scrum Master would be like questions like, are you blocked? Why are you blocked? Have you tried every possible way, or have you exhausted every possible way to figure out a way how to resolve that issue or that impediment or block, right? And if he or she has exhausted every single possible way of fixing the problem and moving that roadblock, then that gets addressed to the Scrum Master, and then the Scrum Master needs to address that. When we take a look at the blended version of that, is that the project leader is basically a person who creates and follows up on tasks, but gives space to get the work done during sprints, right? So again, that could be a project manager, could be a producer. If we're looking at maybe media or creative, team lead and digital PM, if it's like digital media or digital projects, right? In terms of teams, in Waterfall, you've got matrix teams or cross-functional teams where you have your business analysts, and you've got your architects, and you've got your testers, and you've got your designers. So, different teams that you're basically managing as a project manager, and you bringing those teams together to manage them, and at the same time report on their status. Whereas opposed to Agile, the team is 100% dedicated, right? So you've got your you've got your product owner, you've got your dev team, maybe another subject matter expert or X amount of subject matter experts, and maybe a few other members of the team that are part of that team or that Scrum team that is dedicated and solely working on that project, versus in Waterfall, where you've got possibly teams that are working on multiple projects, and your project is only one of the maybe 5 or an amount of projects that they're currently working on or they're being allocated, right? And as well, Agile is self-organizing, as I mentioned. It's trained, and it consists of very experienced collaborators, right? In terms of hybrid is multitasking, working with time to work on the project, able to self-organize, has the ability to manage anything that comes along by being Agile, and has experience with Agile, and is also in collaborative nature. So it kind of sounds like the hybrid is it's a deviation of Agile, and a mixture of waterfall-ish, but very little. It's mostly that this is actually being brought into the hybrid model, right? In terms of stakeholders, if you're working on a traditional waterfall type of project, stakeholders can be external and internal, and they're usually engaged at milestones when they're required, versus Agile, where they're constantly being engaged. And especially like if you're a stakeholder or somebody who's funded the project, or maybe you're a business representative or somebody who is very much vested into the project, but you're not a technical resource or individual, you're still heavily involved, because we've got these sprints that are 1 to 4 weeks long. And after each sprint, you have what's called a demo, right? And these demos all the business stakeholders are present, as well as some of the other stakeholders that are involved in the project. So they're constantly being exposed. And not only are they present at the demos, but they could also be brought in, on daily basis, because the whole concept of Agile is that everything is iterative. And in order to be iterative, teams and individuals need to be in constant contact, right? When we take a look at the blended version or the hybrid version, it's borrowing directly from Waterfall for external and internal. And engagement is often probably not daily, but at least maybe like 3 times a week, maybe 4 times a week, or even sometimes, sometimes it's even daily. It depends really on the type of project that you're on, or the type of project that you're currently managing. If you have a lot of individuals, then most likely you might actually end up borrowing a lot of the Agile model in order to be able to keep constantly a grasp of what's happening on the project, right? So that's very important. And the last item is the communication, right? So communication, and I just want to take this away. Communication is tasks and milestones level for updates with the project status report and the meetings, as opposed to Agile. You've got these Scrum ceremonies, which are the daily stand-ups. You've got the planning, sprint planning, the sprint demos, and the retrospectives, right? And so all of these are used in Agile, which is a bit a different model than Waterfall. But then when we take a look at the hybrid model, we've got a combination of Scrum ceremonies as well as regular status updates. So let me give you an example. So currently, I'm working on a project right now. I'm managing a very large project that has 15 plus teams. Those teams are Agile. Then other teams are actually non-Agile. They're kind of more waterfallish. So at any given week, I have my Scrum of Scrum. So I'm acting as a Scrum Master, but I'm also acting as a Scrum Master to multiple teams, and as well as an overall project manager. So that's kind of a mixture of what I just mentioned here, like Waterfall, Agile, which is kind of a hybrid model, right? And what I basically do is I have 3 times a week, I have a Scrum of Scrums, like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Then I have a bi-weekly meeting with the business involved, which happens every 2 weeks. Then there's also touch points, maybe Wednesdays, sometimes in the morning, 9 or 9:30 for 15-20 minutes with the designers, because the designers are also part of this piece or this product that I'm currently managing, right, for this telecom company, right? So there's going to be a deviation from even the typical hybrid model that is explained in a textbook or by PMI or by any other methodologies, right? And even utilizing Scrum from Scrum Alliance, or utilizing Scrum from maybe PMI again. It could be very different depending on where you're working at, and depending on the team, depending on the project. It varies, and which goes back to the point that I keep on stressing in every one of my videos, is that if you go the certification route, there's no harm in getting these certificates, like for ACP, or if you're CSM, or maybe PMP, or it doesn't give you necessarily any sort of credibility in managing projects. Maybe it gives you credibility in terms of coming across as a certified project professional, or maybe Scrum professional. But in reality, at the end of the day, you are managing these projects, and the textbook and the certification is not going to help you in managing these situations and managing these teams and frameworks and processes, because they're based on something that is completely different from a traditional textbook material, which is found in most of the textbooks and most of the courses that are offered online. And that's where the project management revolution approach that I teach is very different, because it focuses actually on real life scenarios and real projects where you actually get exposure to many different situations on many different projects. There's not only one project, but there's a couple projects. And by being exposed to this versatility and the difference in these projects and processes, you're able to learn the same way that you would actually be learning if you were an experienced project manager, or if you were working at a company, right, on a particular project, right? So that is kind of the difference. And I'm kind of shocked as well that even though PMI and a lot of these certification bodies have been out there for a long time, that there isn't really anything that properly teaches you and gives you tools and techniques that you can actually implement as soon as you complete these certifications and training. But luckily, I've come up with this training program that's been around for almost 3 years now, and many different students have actually signed up to this. Many successful cases, testimonials that you can actually check out below this video. And I always encourage anyone who's interested in checking out Project Management Revolution to actually even reach out to the testimonial individuals in the videos, as well as reach out to them directly on LinkedIn and ask about their experience, right? That's the best way that you can actually, first of all, figure out, am I for real? Obviously, because you're new, you may be watching this video for the first time, or maybe you've seen a couple of my videos, but you're still unsure, whether, you should check this out or not. And if you are interested to find out more, there's a link below actually, there's a couple links. One of the links, the first link is about setting up a strategy session with me. It's a 30-minute free, no obligation strategy session where I actually connect with you and my team as well, and we take a look at where you are right now, and we point you in the right direction. We create a blueprint for yourself, and then if we see that there's a mutual connection where I can actually help you and put you up front above where the standard project managers are, and the traditional salaries are, and experience, that then we get into the program, and you get the experience to start the Project Management Revolution program. Every week, obviously, there's Facebook Live calls where if you are an existing project manager professional and you're looking to get maybe better at it, or if you've got questions, you're stuck somewhere, or you've got challenges with your boss, your managers, your team, or your stakeholders, you can definitely ask to jump on them. We're there for you to answer any of the questions, as well as anything in the actual training program. And then there's also, for those that are still kind of not ready, they're not sure, there's a Facebook group. You can check it out below. There's free content being added every single week. There's also times when I actually jump on lives, Facebook Lives, and I answer a question, and I also share some of my experiences and stories. And so you also get to, get some exposure to me aside from YouTube videos. And you get to interact with others such as yourself, and so that kind of helps you give you that push, and also gives you the ability to connect with others, right, and feel better about yourself and towards that goal and the process of becoming better or becoming that successful project manager. So that's a bit about project management revolution. I wanted to kind of highlight that. The second thing that we want to get through is the actual process lifecycle, right? And I also wanted to kind of jump back into what we earlier talked about, and that is that hybrid model, right? So what you're seeing here is a cycle map or project management life cycle map that I've created for Project Management Revolution course. And so I'm kind of sharing it with you. I'm not trying to sell you, to sign up for the course or sign up for the training. But what I want to show you is, I kind of took the liberty of breaking it down as kind of a cheat sheet for my students to show all the different, stages of the project management lifecycle when it comes to Waterfall. And what I want to do today or in this video, I want to kind of give you guys an idea of how we use this lifecycle, the Waterfall lifecycle, to basically borrow it for our hybrid model, right? So when we take a look at the hybrid model, the process, how we start from the project and then we end the project. So in the initial phase of the project, we have a business case, right? That initially comes in here. So we don't have it here on this chart, but usually a business case comes in, and basically what the business case is, the business is interested in doing this project, and in order to do this project, they have to come up with an idea, right? And in order to come up with the idea, they have to do some investigation. And okay, I finally got it. Okay, and when they do the investigation, they obviously have to go through an analysis to figure out, what the end user is going to be looking for, and the marketing aspect, and so forth. And so they actually end up with this business case, right? And this business case is basically a document that gets in front of everyone, and obviously in front of the sponsor. And ultimately, this business case is then presented as a project. And so that project comes into the project management office, or comes to the project manager. And the first thing that the project manager is going to do is going to write a project charter, right? That kind of outlines what the scope of work is going to be, high level overview of costs, scope, description of the project, who's going to be involved. And this is kind of like very high level, right? And so in a hybrid model, you can start with something like a business case. Like typically somebody comes in and says, okay, we want to do this project, and we want to come up with a description, or we want to formalize it into a document. So they formalize the document, then eventually, a project manager gets assigned. And so he or she starts putting together this document about costs, about, what's going to be on the project and so forth. And this is where, you initiate the project. Obviously, you also are going to identify stakeholders. So we're still following the waterfall model. When we get to planning, we are going to be possibly using gathering requirements. So maybe like a business analyst can come in, and he or she might be doing, analysis of what that specifically is going to be in terms of like requirements, non-functional requirements, functional requirements. And then maybe also after that, there will be some sort of a work breakdown structure, just kind of a high level of what are the components that consist of this big thing, just to get a visual representation. And then from that point on, before you get to any estimates or anything like that, I think at this point we can stop and we can actually transition into Agile Scrum. And what that's going to do is now that we've defined, the BA has defined all the requirements, functional, non-functional, we're going to be creating a story map, right? So story map is going to be something that's going to outline our main epics. So we're borrowing stuff from the Scrum framework, right? And so we create our epics. And then once we create our epics, we're going to create our stories, right? And our stories are actually going to come from the requirements documents, right? Which is back here from BA, right? Business analysts or whoever's going to be gathering requirements, right? Then from the stories, we're actually going to, eventually, once we create the stories, we've got the epics, we can, do that in Jira and set up a project, set up our, components, or set up our, maybe our releases, depending how you set up your Jira instance. And then you're gonna go and you're gonna create all the stories. Then each one of the stories, eventually, once you start your Scrum ceremonies, you're gonna do your sprint planning. But before you do sprint planning, there's going to be entries into the backlog. So you're going to put all your stories and your epics. And then once you have sprint planning, then you're going to start populating stuff. And you're going to start doing a story point estimation where you assign a story point by using Fibonacci sequence or card sorting or whichever method is best to be used on your project. Then eventually you formalize that into a release plan, and you get all your sprints lined up with all your features, or maybe possibly you don't have your whole release plan, but you've got planned up ahead sprints. And then obviously, you have your Scrum Master, you've got your PO, you've got your dev team, right? And then you're going to start, booking your ceremonies, right? And the ceremonies that you're going to be booking, they will be, again, around what we talked about here, is you're going to have your sprint planning, your daily stand-ups, your sprint demos, and your retrospectives. And also one other thing that is not mentioned on this chart is the grooming sessions. And the grooming sessions will be every week, and you're going to be basically refining your backlog, right? So what I've just explained and shared with you is that kind of like Scrum iterative approach or framework that the team will be basically working on, in 2-week cycles, 1-week cycle, 3 or 4. And then after that, they're going to have those demos. And then eventually, you're going to be also possibly, in terms of executing the project or managing the project, you can probably use, you can probably use for risk management. You can use your plan for risks by identifying risk and identifying register. Probably you can use procurement plan for your, your plans for your SOWs or your documentation that's related maybe with vendors. And maybe, you might also use stakeholder plan to manage your stakeholders. And for that, you can create like your RACI chart, where you identify who's responsible, accountable, communicated, and informed, right? Then also you can create a human resources plan, maybe to monitor like who's available, like what the resourcing is. Possibly on a hybrid project, you might actually not have dedicated resources. So for that, you can create like a Excel spreadsheet or maybe a Microsoft project document that you can actually plan resources ahead, maybe by teams, and like X amount of months ahead, so that you can actually do proper resourcing for your project, or for your Agile project, or portion of the Scrum section. And what's interesting is that for all of these things, you can use, like, for resource planning, you can use either like Excel, or you can use like MS Project. And for your Agile or your Scrum, you can use like Jira. And to report any of the stuff related with the issues and even communication, you can use Confluence. So I'm just giving you, like, guys, an idea of like how a blended version would work. Controlling costs, when we come to monitoring and controlling, like you're monitoring costs, for example, like every month there needs to be a amalgamation of forecasts up ahead of how much each team has burned. Let's say like you've got like 10 teams, so you've got to report on these things. And you would probably do it in a traditional way, where you would communicate via email to the leads, or maybe like the senior managers, and try and get feedback on their burn or the burn of their team. And so you report back that to finance. So that would be kind of a traditional waterfallish approach to managing costs. Also, there's a way how you can use earned value and burn down chart to kind of combine it together to monitor costs on the Agile portion of the execution. Obviously, monitoring and controlling risks, you would do by identifying a risk register that you would monitor every single week based on the waterfall type of approach. Quality control, you can use, again, traditional waterfall model. Verifying control scope. This is a very interesting one. So this can be also managed by a CR. One of the other videos I talked about the advantages, disadvantages of Agile versus Waterfall. And on a hybrid project, you can decide whether you want to use the Agile approach of quickly making iterations and changes, or the traditional Waterfall approach, where you actually have to use a change control protocol with the CR document, and then that gets approved in terms of time, resources, and cost. And so that could be also another example. This is all depending on what type of project organization you're implementing hybrid in, right? In terms of monitoring and controlling work, most likely that will be, again, a blend of Waterfall and Agile. So you would kind of act as a Scrum Master for the Agile portion, and then for the documentation portion, finance, issues, quality, maybe performance. You would use the traditional project management waterfall approach, although for performance report, you can actually use a burn down chart, right? And you can assess how well team's velocity is. So giving you guys a quick video of how a hybrid model would look like if you were going to be managing it, and just wanted to give you some exposure and an idea of how that works. And again, if you're interested to learn more about this and how to master this and become an expert in Agile and expert in Waterfall, you can click the link below, schedule a free strategy session with me and my team. We'll talk to you. We'll see where you are currently, and we'll devise a blueprint plan to get you where you want to go. Thanks for sticking around, and I'll look to see you in the next round of videos.